Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today the 25th of November 2013. So in today's news we have a little bit of a recap of a recent interview with, I think it was with BlizzPro. Yeah, it was with BlizzPro. This is just on a whole bunch of things. It was with their technical director and their quest designer, so overall I think it was quite interesting. There's also some stuff from Ghostcrawler, just a complete overview of a bunch of blue tweets covering things like models, garrisons, and a tiny bit of flying, because, you know, we can't get past a single WoW daily without having flying. And, yeah, that'll be it. Unfortunately, the way Mondays work out, by the time I'm up and doing the show, no one in Blizzard is awake yet, because they're in California, so sometimes we don't get as much new stuff on a Monday. Anyway, let's jump into this. So first of all, they said that their new goal with the new models is to have every single vanilla race done by the launch of Warlords of Draenor. That's not set in stone, but it's what they want. Draenei and Blood Elves are a thing that are planned after that, but not necessarily for launch. So they're not an afterthought, but they're lower in the priority, and I suppose fair enough, because they do look significantly better than the crappy old 2004 models. Also for Worgen and Goblin, well, they're on the cards, but they already look kinda decent, and their animation rigs and that sort of thing, they're not terrible, so they're on the cards, but they're not really a high priority thing like the others. I wouldn't expect these for launch, and I'm not even too sure if I'd expect these for Warlords. Perhaps it will be like in a content patch or something like that. Also for cloaks, they said that there will be, well, currently on the new versions of the cloaks they have, there is some clipping, and clipping, that's just stuff like it clipping through armor, going through a character's tail, that kind of thing. So what they're doing is they're looking at adding physics instead of using pure animations. Right now everything is 100% animation driven, and, well, this basically means that everything is kind of canned. So when you run, your cloak will flap the same way every time because it's just an animation that plays through. And while this is fine, it can look okay, it can be well crafted, it's not dynamic, it will not react to your character or the world that you're in, so they're thinking of adding physics. Now this is great, but one of the main concerns that they have is, well, animations are a lot more CPU friendly than physics are, because physics is. Calculating physics on cloaks and during the collision, that sort of thing, is, well, in general, physics is kind of complicated, not complicated, just resource intensive, so I'd say the best way to do this is to have the current old animation system in, then add a more physics-driven system in as a high-end option. So it's the kind of thing where you have a slider, a little bit like with water, so if the slider's at the very bottom, you get the normal animation thing, and if it's at the very top, you just get varying levels of physics simulation. I think that's the best way to do it. Personally, it absolutely does my head in the way that capes and cloaks and that sort of thing will clip through your armor, and it's the one reason why I don't show them in my character. It's just utterly infuriating. Anyway, let's move on to something else, and it's the level 90 boost. They said that once you apply the boost, your character will get a set of gear, and it's stuck into a starter zone. Now the cool thing about this starter zone is that it's a little bit like the Death Knight one. In terms of the lore of it, or the story of it, I have absolutely no idea. But essentially what happens is you start off with a very limited tool set as far as your abilities go, and then over time you will acquire more, just more abilities, more spells, stuff like that, as you quest. So just like the Death Knight one, I think that's kinda cool. Now one thing I really hope they do is that they apply the experience that they got through Proving Grounds, so that in this level 90 boost starter zone, there can be things which teach people how to tank, teach them how to DPS and to heal and all that sort of stuff, and just to teach them a lot about the group dynamic. Perhaps you could go through like a mini dungeon or something with a bunch of NPCs, and you could fulfill one of those roles, and I think that would be really cool actually. It would give people a good idea. Actually in general for Proving Grounds, I think being able to do a test dungeon with a bunch of NPCs would be kind of fun. Well, not fun, but I think just a great learning tool, and that's really something that would be good. I'd be happy enough with letting people into a dungeon that have maybe 5 item levels less if they get if they perform really well in this NPC driven one, so I think that could be nice. Anyway, let's move on to some other things, and they said that the alternate timeline is really only there to facilitate the story, and our timeline will not at all be affected unless we allow the Iron Horde through. Now a lot of people think, well, does that just mean that this is kind of a pointless expansion? Well, not really, compared to say the Burning Crusade. In the Burning Crusade our timeline was really not affected, bar us leaving on a little space holiday. Well, I suppose less so with Wrath and Cataclysm just because of their story, but yeah, you know what I mean, like you are still just going through the portal dealing with the thing, and it's more that if you don't deal with it, then we're all dead. Now, a bit of a thing is classes, and a lot of people are, well, not a lot of people, but certainly some people are a little bit miffed that we're not getting another class or race. So on the topic of this, they said that classes are very balanced at the minute, in terms of where they have been in the past, and that is true. While, okay, balance isn't perfect, it's better than it was in, say, the days of Wrath or maybe early Cataclysm and that sort of thing. So, yeah, they're decently balanced at the minute, and what they seem to be doing this next expansion is doing a little bit of button pruning, a little bit of tweaking, and just general things like that. And this means that after Warlords of Draenor, I think class balance will be in a much, much better place. One thing to bear in mind, if you have a look at the level 100 talents, a lot of them will replace or change a current ability or just do things like that in general, and that is really just a way of meaning that they can tweak with the classes, they can add really fun stuff, but not add to button bloat. And once they reduce button bloat, then things will be a little bit easier to balance because there'll be just sort of less number factors and things like that. Still, I think that it's actually the right decision not to add another class this expansion. They can just batten down the hatches, make sure everything's good, and then perhaps next expansion we get, I don't know, we get a new hero class or something like that. Next expansion, it does make sense from a narrative standpoint that we're going to get the Burning Crusade, and that would be the perfect place to add in Demon Hunters. Now, for a lot of people, by the way, who don't think Demon Hunters are a thing because they're too similar to Warlocks or Hunters, well, a lot of people have no idea what a Demon Hunter actually is in World of Warcraft lore. Illidan is a Demon Hunter. They're not a ranged class at all, or anything like that, so it could be done. In the same way that, like, yeah, whatever, it can be done. So, let's move on to some other things, and dailies. Just general max level kind of MacGuffins. So, there were too many dailies in Mists of Pandaria. I think all the players agree with that, and certainly so do Blizzard. And especially when you put alts into the mix. The problem with this is, okay, the dailies may have been possible in one character, but if you were doing these in 2 or 3 characters, then on the days you do, like, you actually do go and do your dailies, holy crap, you had so many to do, it was ridiculous. And in Warlords there will still be plenty to do at max level, and there will be a lot more variety, so it won't really feel like dailies. There will probably be some things and different mechanics to make things a little bit faster for alts. I'd imagine that it would just be if you gain like a certain amount of rep in your main, then all your other characters get a buff. Something to that effect, I suppose. I don't really think that cross-character, reputation, or valor, or anything like that is the right solution. I think it's more that in Mists of Pandaria, the dailies themselves were the problem, not the idea of having to do things in multiple characters. Even with that reputation buff that you get at Revered, you still had to do so many dailies per day if you wanted to get your rep up, so yeah, it was just kinda crap. Anyway, the final thing from this interview is that they said that if Garrisons are on a per-character basis, they would likely make it so that improvements in leveling, that sort of thing, is faster on alts. I think that's good, and I actually think that this should be on a character-by-character basis. Now, the reason for that is, first of all, you get gear from these things. And I'm not too sure if I like the idea of being able to gear up your alts really quickly off your main's Garrison, because you can actually get epics from Garrisons. Okay, it's not a giant amount, but I'd imagine in terms of item level, the more leveled up your Garrison is, the higher item level you can get from running raids and that sort of thing with all your little followers. So yeah, I think it would be very odd with alt balance if you could just send everything over from your main, i.e. there was just one big shared Garrison. And another nice thing about it being on a character-by-character basis is that each character can have a more specialized Garrison. I think that would be a really nice way to differentiate your characters and actually make them feel like different characters, which is something that's sometimes a little bit lacking in World of Warcraft. Now, in the other news today, well, there's no news, but Ghostcrawler, thankfully, has been doing a bit of talking. I usually do sort of jump into his Twitter myself to find some stuff, but luckily enough, from time to time, MMO Champion do a great job of, like, just putting all in one nice big list, so I can preen out the things that I think are interesting, and we're going to be covering models, garrisons, and flying. So first of all, for new models, they said that there will be new attack animations. However, they won't be new in terms of style, they'll just be new in terms of they need to be redone. All these new models have got completely different animation rigs, so they can't just copy and paste things over. This means that any new like animations and things, they have to be done from the ground up. Now this is good because you'll still have the same feel, like your Night Elf Warrior is still going to hit and strike things as if it was a Night Elf Warrior, but it will be doing things in a more, hopefully a more fluid and high fidelity manner. And I think that's just across the board, just a great thing, you know? I think animations really, they do a great job of making your character come to life, and the more high fidelity these are, the better. I think it's fun when you're playing a Pandaren and you just realize that everything kind of feels better, just because of that overall model detail, so yeah. I know we're not getting a new race, but honestly it nearly feels like we're getting 8 new races. And with all these different upgrades that we're getting. Also, for the Moonkins, unfortunate news for you guys, you're not getting a model update. This really, it's something they have promised it during Wrath of the Lich King, but right now it's it's kind of not as high in the totem pole as models are for the races. So yeah, I don't really think this is going to come in a while. The way Ghostcrawler phrased his tweet, it just sounded like it's the kind of thing it's regrettable that it's not in, but they don't really have a time slot to put it into in terms of workflow, so a little bit unfortunate, I suppose, for you guys. Anyway, next on to Garrisons. They said that logging on daily won't be needed since not most of the missions, but there are missions which take a few days. The way it works is that you have quests which are, I think, 15 minutes, scenarios are either half an hour or a few hours, then you have dungeons which can take a day, and raids which can take a few days. So this means that if you're only able to log on every once in a while, there's still going to be garrison-based stuff that you can do. And I would imagine that the shorter ones would, at least at sort of the base, be a little bit more efficient to compensate for the amount of effort it takes to constantly be babying them, I guess. But I think that efficiency will ultimately depend on the traits of your followers. Now, your followers can have different traits. I think an example that they gave was Orcbane, which means that, well, I don't know if it means that you get better loot, or maybe it means things go faster, but essentially if you have a follower which has Orcbane and you send it on a mission that involves killing orcs, then they'll be a little bit better. They just didn't really specify how much better or in what regard they would be better. Also, for race-based garrisons, they said that they are not on the table, because it would involve making 13 different sets of every single building. This would be a massive amount of work, and it would probably push the expansion back. Because like that art team, they're very busy, and getting them to make another, I suppose, yeah, that would be 11 additional ones in comparison to the, like on top of the 2 that we're going to have anyway. That would just be a lot of work, and yeah, it would be really cool, but I just don't think it's worth the time. And finally, they said that they don't want garrisons to be overpowered, but really their main focus is just making them fun. The thing is, though, that they're not going to be as optional as something like Brawler's Guild or Garrisons. Okay, you can just not partake in them, but there are definitely benefits to doing so, and I suppose it's probably an intended part of gameplay at max level. Personally, that's gameplay that, to me, is very interesting and fits in with my schedule very well, so I couldn't be happier. I think this is one of the best features that they've added to the game in many years. Probably this and Flex are the 2 biggest things that have happened recently. Of course, LFR, I think, was... if only Flex had came first, then perhaps we would not have needed LFR, but whatever. Let's move on to flying. He said that the reason they're not doing the Wrath model is because it trivializes leveling and alts. Basically, the way they're balancing it, quests will have comparatively higher experience in comparison to what we're used to, and this means that leveling is a little bit faster, but it's not trivialized in terms of gameplay. And by trivialized in terms of gameplay, it just means that flying, okay, it might have previously made quests quicker, but it stripped the point of the quest and made every single quest be the same instead of quests being their objective in combination with the environment in which they took place. Flying removed that. So what's going to happen is we're probably going to be we will be leveling up faster than we did in Mists of Pandaria, and it should be more fun because quests will matter and each one will probably feel a little bit more different than they have in the past. So yeah, I think overall they've chosen a very good way to balance the lack of flying, and I think this could really work out to the sort of the overall positive of the game. Finally, they said that gathering is one of the reasons why they will not ultimately remove flying. I think that's fair enough, and honestly, flying is a great reward. It's fun. I mean, it's fun in terms of, oh, look, a new thing I can now get from places quicker. That's nice. When you're stuck in old content that's not relevant, there's nothing really fun about being arbitrarily held back from the speed at which you move. So that's okay, but in new content, because you're sort of moving around in zones from thing to thing, when they're actually supposed to be useful gameplay, flying just gets around that. So I think it's fine to have no flying at the current stuff, because it means the current stuff's more fun, and then flying in the old stuff, because you're not really going to be spending much time in the old stuff anyway. Anyway, so all good stuff. I said anyway and stuff too much in that sentence. Whatever. That's it for today's show. Thank you for watching. If you like the show, please hit like and subscribe, because they really do help me out. And with that, I'll see you all next time.